Mic check 1 2 1 2. It's the Y2K Collector, and I'm here to talk about 9 games that you really cannot emulate. And I'm not saying that they cannot be emulated. What I'm saying is that um, emulating these games isn't going to get you anywhere close to what the original experience was. Now, I recently posted a video about emulation and how you can emulate the game, but you can't emulate the experience. And I got a lot of funny comments on that video. And a lot of them surrounded around like money, right? So it's like, listen, I'm not going to pay XYZ amount of dollars for an experience, which you could say that, right? I get that. But people pay for experiences all the time. When you go to the movies, you're paying for an experience. You could easily watch those movies at home or wait for them to come out on Netflix or on Blu-ray or on DVD. But you choose to go to the movie because you want that experience. Whether you want the experience of watching it as soon as it first comes out or watching it in a movie theater, you're paying for the experience. If you've ever gone to a concert, you could listen to those same bands on CD, on cassette. I know I sounded old when I said cassette. You could even watch their live performances, right? But you go because you want the experience. So to try and nullify or discredit the experience you get from a video game, to me, makes no sense unless you're a person who doesn't care about experience altogether. But whether we realize it or not, we're constantly paying for experiences. The movies, the museum, amusement parks, even going to the mall, right? Like going to the mall, if you go to the mall and you buy something, or if you buy most things that you buy in brick and mortar stores, you can buy them online, but you go to the store and you buy it at the store because you want the store experience. You want to feel it in your hands before you buy it. You want to see what the material feels like. You want to see how fun it is. A lot of Apple products, if you've ever gone to an Apple store, you went there for an experience. A lot of those products that you see on Apple, you can easily order online. So I just want to start the video off by saying, while yes, there are some experiences that maybe we don't want to pay for, or maybe we don't see the value in paying for, to say that experiences just aren't worth it in general, to me, is not an accurate statement, because we're paying for experiences all the time. Now, with that out the way, there are 9 games that I don't think would really be emulated well. And I'm starting off with 3 PSP games. And I'm starting off with PSP because I've seen a couple PSP ports to the Switch, and to be honest with you, they stink on the Switch. We might as well have left them on the PSP. And one in particular that I can think of is Prinny. The Prinny 1 and Prinny 2 should have stayed on PSP. To me, there's nothing, you don't really get anything out of it being on the Nintendo Switch. And when I first got it on the Switch, I thought the graphics would have been updated, or I thought there would have been some type of enhancements, but it had the same exact PSP graphics. So with all that being said, let me go through these 9 games real quick. So the first one is Gurumin: A Monstrous Tale. This is like a action adventure game where you have like this drill, and you use these drills to basically defeat these ghosts or these goblins that have taken over this town. And this is a really fun one. It's a fun action adventure game. Lots of jumping, platforming. It's 3D, but it's PSP 3D. What do I mean when I say that? For those of you who maybe didn't grow up around the time of the PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, and PSP, the PSP was the bridge between PS1 graphics and PS2 graphics. That's the easiest way to say it. The graphics on the PSP were not quite as good as PS2, but they were leaps and bounds better than PS1. So we appreciated it. We appreciated what we saw. Now, granted, the PSP had a much smaller screen, so almost anything is going to look good on a PSP screen with how small it is. But still, it had good graphics. So Gurumin, I think, is a game that you really would want to experience on the original PSP. Here's another PSP game for you. Kenkabancho: The Bad Rumble, right? An Atlas game. This is a 3D beat 'em up game. So this is actually really fun. Think about Yakuza, right? Or like Fist of the North Star, any one of those like 3D beat 'em up type games. That's exactly what this was, or is rather. Lots of different moves, different combos. You meet a bunch of characters along the way. It kind of almost had like a Grand Theft Auto vibe to it as well. But this is a really cool beat 'em up. And again, this is one that I don't think would be good if it was emulated or even ported to a modern console. This is just one of those games that's best experienced on the PSP. We got another one here. Chili Con Carnage. Now, Chili Con Carnage is I like to think of this as like the Latin American version of Grand Theft Auto. That's what it feels like, right? With more running and gunning and kind of shooting, less more about the auto, more about kind of like the guns blazing type here. And you are literally just running and gunning. You have like that motion slowdown in this game where you can like slow things down. And this is really like a shoot 'em up, blast 'em up type game. It's got some fun elements. It's like Grand Theft Auto meets Max Payne. But the thing I like about this one again is it has really good graphics for this time, for this era in graphics. This is a really good game graphically. And again, this is like a Max Payne meets Grand Theft Auto type game, but one that you definitely would want to experience on the PSP. And I mentioned this for these PSP games primarily because of how they were made, right? Graphically and everything like that. Yeah, you could try to emulate this on maybe another console or maybe on a different handheld, but you're not going to get the same vibe and you're not going to get the same feel, and it's not going to look any better. Like emulating these games, I don't think is going to do anything for you looks wise. So that's kind of why I say that these 3 PSP games are best played on the PSP. And thankfully, these aren't super expensive. Kenka-Bancho is probably the most expensive one, but Gurumin and Chili Con Carnage, I think these are like $30 games now. Maybe I'm wrong. I haven't checked the prices on these in a while, so don't be mad if they're more expensive, but let me know down in the comments. Now we have a couple PlayStation 1 games that I'm going to show you that I think definitely you can emulate, but if I had my choice, I would definitely say buy a PlayStation 1 and experience these games that way, because some of these games are ports. They're already ported from an arcade. So if you emulate them, you're just getting an even more watered down version of the game. So the first one up is Rival Schools. Rival Schools is a classic tag team arcade fighting game. You get to play as 2 characters that you can swap in between rounds. It's basically made up of like a bunch of like school students and like teachers, professors, whatever the case may be. At least that's how the characters are dressed in this game. They all have really cool moves. They all have super moves that you can do. You can also do tag team special attacks, like tag team super moves in this game. To me, especially when Tekken Tag came out, I know a lot of people were big on Tekken Tag in the arcade. This was the better fighting game to me. Rival Schools and then the follow-up Project Justice, these were some of the best 3D fighting games that were released at their time. And these came out like right around the, coming out of the 90s, going into the 2000s. This one actually released in 97. So this is like one of the earlier ones. And this was an arcade classic. Now they did port this to the PlayStation 1. I'm not sure if this ever got a Sega Saturn port. I can't remember. Let me know. Someone let me know down in the comments if this got a port to any other home consoles. But this got a port to the PlayStation 1, and clearly the port was like the watered down version of the game. So now if you go and emulate this, you're getting like an even more watered down version of the game. And games like this rely on speed, precision, timing, and usually there's like you kind of lose a little bit of that when you're emulating a game. Everything seems to move at like a half step too slow. And so for fighting games, like, yeah, you can play it, you can experience it, you can have fun, but to really enjoy it in its full glory, a game like Rival Schools, you got to just get it. Now, Rival Schools is an expensive game, so I'm not going to knock anyone who emulates this game, because this is an expensive game. So I'm not mad at anyone who chooses to emulate this, because this is an expensive game. So, but do you? If you have it in you to get the original thing, go ahead and get it. Another PlayStation game that I think would be hard to emulate, Silent Bomber. Really, really cool kind of action adventure game where you're not quite Bomberman. You do attack your enemies by setting bombs, and then you have different type of bombs that come with different attributes on them, and you get like these little E-chips that kind of increase your ability to drop bombs and what you can do. There's really amazing boss battles, and what I really like about this game is how open it feels. Like the levels are really broad and open, and you get a lot of room to work with. There's a lot of landscape to work with in this game, which I think is kind of rare for these types of PlayStation 1 games. I didn't see that a lot, so you definitely get a lot of that here. The boss battles are sick. I really like the boss battles. And this is one of those games that had decent graphics for it being on the PlayStation 1. So definitely think that this is one that would be a tough one to emulate and truly enjoy. I would say that these are probably ones that you would want to, if you can, get and play in their original format. And this is PlayStation. I'm going to stop this video here, but I am going to come back a little bit later on today and talk about Sega games that I think just you really don't want to emulate, that you really want to play, you know, on their original hardware. But yeah, so this is part one. These are some PlayStation games. We got some PSP games and some PlayStation 1 games. Let me know down in the comments, have you ever emulated any of these games that I have here? And if you have, how much fun did you have? And what did you emulate them on? What device, what tool did you play them on? I heard a lot of people in the comments talking about they emulate games on their phone. That's interesting. The only game I've ever emulated on my phone is Streets of Rage 1. And I've played that a lot. That's actually pretty fun. But those are 2D games. They're relatively easy to emulate on almost anything. These are like PlayStation games. These are 5th generation games that, from what I understand, were and are some of the hardest to emulate. Let me know down in the comments. I'll be back in a little bit with part 2, talking about some Sega games that I think are very difficult to emulate. It's the Y2K Collector. Take it easy.